Chapter 4. First Call of Gurudev. Tests at every step. It was not a matter of lack of confidence, but a mere curiosity. Gurudev read my mind and said in a jovial mood, "There are such Siddh Purush, no doubt, but two new factors have intervened, requiring these divine souls to withdraw into their astral bodies. First, the easy and rapid means of communication and transport have increased manifold the rush of tourists as opposed to pilgrims to these regions, making uninterrupted sadhana impossible. Secondly, if they shifted to still higher regions, it would have become well nigh impossible to sustain their physical bodies under those inhospitable conditions. So they have abandoned their physical bodies and now live in their astral bodies, which are not physically visible, and they are not required to do anything to satisfy their physical needs. Therefore, all these divine souls have not only shed their physical forms, but also the location of their stay. They have even changed their routine of sadhana. Moreover, they can be visible only to genuine sadhaks who have familiarity with occult planes of consciousness, and they do not shower their grace on undeserving persons masquerading as seekers of truth. When you come to the Himalayas next time, you will have a glimpse of such Siddh Purush. When Gurudev had appeared before me for the first time in my room to guide me, I had come to know how Devatmas who are consciously aware of infinite Parabrahm live in astral bodies. It was my own childish ignorance which entertained this curiosity. I was truly blessed by seeing the rishis in their astral bodies and by the assurance given by Gurudev that I would have their glimpse during my next visit to the Himalayas. Gurudev said, "When I summon you again, you have to be here for a period extending from 6 months to 1 year. Your body has now become fit for living in conditions prevalent here. You will have to come here 3 times to strengthen and ripen all that you have practiced here, and all arrangements will be made to fulfill all your basic physical needs. This tapasya in seclusion and solitude is also necessary because you will be able to learn patience and endurance, which are needed for shifting from physical body into the astral and from the astral into the causal. The human body is afflicted by hunger, thirst, cold, heat, sleep, and fatigue. One can hardly overcome them living at home because all facilities are available there, and there is no challenge for practicing devout austerities, penance, and endurance. In the same way, mind is overwhelmed by 6 kinds of impurities which are inherent in the ordinary day-to-day life of the world, and it is essential to retire to a secluded place to overcome and transcend them. These are passion, that is lust, anger, avarice, delusion, pride, and jealousy. You have to live separately in solitude in the Himalayas to practice physical endurance and mental austerity and penance to fight against internal infirmities. Thus, by living 3 times for a total period of about 3 years in the Himalayas, and by establishing public contacts during the rest of the time, you will be put to a test to ensure that your devout austerity has become well grounded." This program was chalked by Devatma Gurudev and was in tune with my own inner aspirations. As a result of my association with saintly persons, that is satsang, and regular studies and contemplation, that is swadhyay, I was fully convinced that by exercising control over the 10 organs of sensation and action and the invisible mind, a person can get rid of dispersion of life energy and his inner powers can be awakened. This is the highway for becoming a Siddh Purush even while living this physical life. Restraints of the organs, restraint in respect of use of material wealth and time, and restraint of thoughts, these are four kinds of Sanyam, that is self control. Once these are fully regulated and controlled, a person gets liberated from lust, anger, greed, and attachment, attains self transformation, and acquires siddhis. I wanted to remain engrossed in tapasya, but how could I do that? One who has surrendered himself to the divine will has no choice of his own. Therefore, when I heard from Gurudev what I was required to do, I was too happy to contain myself and started waiting anxiously for the appropriate time. Gurudev said, "Our talks are now over. Go to Gangotri, where arrangements have been made for your stay, food, etc., and start your sadhana sitting on Bhagirath Shila, Gauri Kund. After completing austerities in solitude, return to your home. I will be watching over you regularly." Gurudev disappeared. His messenger left me at Gomukh, from where I reached the place which was indicated. After completing the austerities at Bhagirath Shila, I returned home. During the return journey, I did not face the type of difficulties which had tested me at every step of the onward journey. They were the tests in which I had succeeded. When I came back home, my weight had increased by 18 pounds and my face had filled up and become radiant with an inner glow. My vitality had considerably increased. I was always in a jovial mood. People asked for prasad of Gangaji. I gave a pinchful of sand of Gangotri and some water of Gomukh as prasad to everyone. This was the only tangible thing which I had brought with me. In fact, this pilgrimage was an important turning point in my life. Although I had visited the Himalayas subsequently also, and it is my spiritual home, the very first darshan, sight of the imperceptible divine rishis who controlled and orchestrated from behind the scenes the affairs of this earth during my visit with Gurudev, left an indelible imprint on my inner self. I had also an inkling of the aim of my life, my future program, and also about the awakened souls who were to associate with me as my colleagues. My first visit to the Himalayas is a story of experiences which can give real inspiration to genuine seekers of truth. Carnal mind was defeated, I succeeded. I learned the truth about the existence of Siddh Purush during my first journey to the Himalayas. I was disillusioned of the earlier notion that I had in the matter, and also disillusioned others who had similar notions. Time and again, I have been emphasizing upon others that a meeting with saints, Siddh Purush, is not possible unless the requisite competence is attained, because they live in astral bodies and appear only before those who are worthy to see them. A detailed description about my pilgrimage to the Himalayas is given in my book titled Colleagues in Solitude, Sunsan Ke Sahchar. This book is literary travelogue. One gets a clue from it how desires, fear, and adverse circumstances can be overcome through willpower. A person who has to take to the spiritual path has to make his mind and soul strong. I have explained in it why the Himalayas and the banks of Ganga are most suited for sadhana. The main factor behind the fear of loneliness is the unstable mind. If the mind is steadfast and strong, there is no need of companions, and man, like animals, need not be afraid of loneliness. Even ferocious animals are afraid of human beings. Man possesses sufficient intelligence to defend himself. If a man summons up courage and thinks that his hands, feet, eyes, face, mind, and intellect are constantly with him to guide him, there is no reason for him to be afraid. Only few animals are ferocious and they can be faced with fearlessness and a feeling of love. Raja Harishchandra lived in the cremation ground and served as a sweeper. Maasais of Kenya live amidst tigers in dense forests. Adivasis live in dense forests surrounded by snakes, tigers, etc. There is therefore no reason why an intelligent person of steadfast will cannot live there. A person comes all alone in this world. He eats, sleeps, walks alone. He has ultimately to leave this world alone to the invisible world. As a natural consequence of aspiring to lead a spiritual life, there should be at least so much attitudinal change in our mind that we are able to feel happy in all circumstances. By practice, our body can be molded in any manner we like. Eskimos of North Pole region live only on fish. Persons living in high regions of inaccessible Himalayas and Alps live along despite the lack of normal facilities and creature comforts. Animals can live on grass. If man also selects some particular useful leaves as his diet, he can easily subsist on them after some practice. I had several such experiences in my first journey to Himalayas. My wayward mind came under control and carnal tendencies were thrown out and replaced by positive, joyful thoughts and experiences. God has provided alternatives to face the inclemency of weather. When there is snowfall all around, there is adequate warmth inside the caves. In Gomukh region, there is a shrub which is combustible. Similarly, there is a particular vegetation which produces flickering light in the night. Devkand grown inside the earth in Tapovan and Nandanvan is extremely sweet like sweet potatoes. Outwardly it has a stem like grass, but if it is dug out, it has a giant-sized root sufficient to nourish a person for a week. It can be taken either raw or after roasting on fire. The drink prepared by boiling the knots grown on the stem of birch tree is so warmth-giving that a man gets perspiration in bitter cold. It is a tasteful drink which can be taken with or without salt. The skin of birch tree can be used like cloth as bedding and covering. God has thus made all arrangements to enable a person to face the fury of inclement weather. Man gets disturbed by infirmity of his own mind or by depending only on things to which he is habitually accustomed. If a man becomes self-reliant, 3/4 of his problems are solved and other alternatives can be found for the remaining 1/4. He can thus adjust himself in all circumstances. He finds himself in difficulties only when he wants that all others should act according to his wishes and outer conditions should always be in his favor. If a person changes himself, he can adapt himself to all circumstances and lead a happy and vibrant life. I had heard and read all these things, but I put them into practice only during this pilgrimage of the Himalayas. It was a good training, a kind of tapasya, which gave me an opportunity to exercise control over my wayward mind. Now I do not have any difficulty in facing adverse circumstances. It hardly takes any time for me in converting unfavorable circumstances into favorable opportunities for soul growth. There was no scope in this solitude for passion, anger, and illusion. Fear and temptation, which appeared by way of tests, were dispelled smilingly without any difficulty. False sense of self-pride did not work here. I thought, I am a soul. I am light personified. I am all powerful. Fear and temptation cannot overpower and drag me down. Seeing my mind firm and determined, all forces of evil conspiring to drag me down into the pit of self ruination beat a hasty retreat in disarray. It is not appropriate to describe all such events which tested the rock like firmness of my fortitude and character, since I am still alive and it might be construed as self praise. I have simply to say here that a pilgrim of spiritual path has to encounter the onslaughts of fear and temptation and has to gird up his loins to face the challenges. One who does not prepare himself to go through this baptism of fire has to repent like the ringmaster of a circus who breaks his limbs and endangers his life by performing his feats without necessary preparation in a haphazard manner. Amongst Upasana, Sadhana and Aradhana, Sadhana is the most important. The rituals of Upasana, that is worship, can be performed by anybody just as it does his other routine chores. Piety, benevolence, doing good to others fall within the purview of Aradhana. Nothing more remains to be done if a person has reformed himself by sadhana. An elevated soul works effortlessly and naturally for universal good. It becomes his only preoccupation and he acquires mastery in it. I had to perform sadhana of self-control and mental restraint during my first journey to Himalayas. Whatever divine attributes I have been blessed with are the result of sadhana. Upasana has become a mere pastime. At home, I used to sleep for 4 hours daily as I had to attend to various types of work. Here in the Himalayas, I slept for 6 hours daily because before sunrise, one could do nothing except mental jap. Due to the height of mountains, sunrise here is late and darkness sets in much earlier than in the plains. Therefore, out of the 12 hours of darkness, 6 hours were set apart for sleeping and 6 hours for upasana. There was no compulsion to take bath before upasana. It was possible to bathe and dry clothes only at noon. I had to chalk out my daily routine according to the circumstances obtaining there. The one thing that needs special mention about this first journey to the Himalayas is that I had perfected the art of molding my mind according to the circumstances. Figuratively speaking, half the journey towards the appointed goal of life had been covered during this first pilgrimage. Pressures, no doubt, had to be faced in abundance in the first year, but raw iron had been rid of dross through this fire of baptism and had been converted into strong steel capable of being profitably utilized for any purpose in future. My life before going to the Himalayas was altogether different. Life was going on somehow with all the facilities and resources available at hand. Everything appeared to be straight and simple. But no sooner did I reach the Himalayas, everything was topsy-turvy. Circumstances there were almost akin to those which a person newly recruited in the army is required to face when, on account of the outbreak of war, he is required suddenly to rush to take a position at the battlefront and give an account of his valor. The direct result of this pilgrimage was that my carnal mind was totally subdued and my higher self won decisively. The mind tried to evade and procrastinate like a new bullock who is yoked to the plough for the first time. But it did not get any support from anywhere because the farmer behind the plough, that is, the awakened soul, was bent upon taming it at all costs. Ultimately, the mind was left with no alternative but to submissively assent to be yoked to the plough. I had to face altogether new formidable challenges for the whole year, and an apprehension arose in my mind that such a difficult test was bound to adversely affect my health and the doors for material well being would be finally closed for me. In all fairness, I must share with the readers that once such a base materialistic thought did win my mind. Several hypocrites have hoisted their banners of religiosity and piety in the name of the Himalayas and have declared themselves to be Siddh Purush. I was myself acquainted with the life stories of several such persons. I thought, why should I not do the same and indulge in merrymaking for the whole of life? As soon as this thought arose, I resolutely pushed it there and then out of my mind. I understood that my mind was being put to a test. I thought that when material resources for luxury and comfort could be amassed by ordinary intelligence, why should I be hypocrite and defame the Himalayas, Siddh Purush, God and Tapasya? My interview with the divine rishis in the Himalayas changed me completely. Throughout there was a battle going on between the carnal mind and the higher self, but ultimately my higher self returned victorious from the Himalayas. Liberation for me means release from the clutches of desires and cravings. This I have attained. Heaven for me means the mingling together as a river of the triple streams of molding one's life in accordance with sublime and ennobling ideals, seeing only the good in others behind the facade of appearance to the contrary and loving others through identity of spirit. I have been bathing in this blissful river of heavenly joy for a long time. I have now no desire either to go to heaven or attain liberation.
My life, its legacy and message. हमारी वसीयत और विरासत. Author श्री राम शर्मा आचार्य.
If you found this video helpful, then please like, comment and share it, and subscribe to our YouTube channel Rishi Chintan. Please press the bell icon so that you will receive notifications of our upcoming videos. Thank you.